Hello! Today I'm returning to the Tekken series with a look at the history of Hwoarang. Now, Hwoarang is another of these characters who, while he isn't a legacy inclusion to Tekken from its outset in 1994, he has nonetheless skyrocketed in appeal since his debut in Tekken 3, and as mentioned in my episodes discussing Jin, he was another of these characters who, like Eddie, like Xiao Yu, like Brian Fury, really boasted the advances and the fluidity of gameplay with his vibrant, stance-switching Taekwondo moveset, and he was a solid example of how Tekken 3 was a watershed moment for fighting games for the Tekken saga, which ushered in a new calibre of gameplay, fighter and story. Now, that said, and before getting into Hwoarang specifically, it's worth noting that, like Jin, like Forrest Law, like Julia Chang, this character does have a link to the past and an elder narrative predecessor in the form of his tutor and Law's Tekken 2 sub-boss, which is Baek Do San. And so, while Taekwondo has not debuted exclusively with Hwoarang, and actually I was playing Tekken 2 not long ago as Peck, and he does have a really good moveset by 1996 standards, that was augmented faithfully in his later appearances from Tekken 5 onwards. And despite this, Hwoarang in many ways embodies Taekwondo in Tekken, and he built on this blueprint of Baek's moveset, incorporating his own variability right off the bat in Tekken 3 with his multitude of kick maneuvers, switching stances and so on. And I think Hwoarang's inclusion and this excellent moveset he brought to bear on Tekken 3 is really exemplified, and I always fondly recall it, in the arcade interval screen called Embu, which showcased, among other things, Eddie's capoeira, Xiao Yu's kung fu, and Hwoarang practicing the Hwoarang Taekwondo pattern in his student's debok. And this scene combined to create a really great introduction for these new entrants in the game series. Turning to the game itself and Hwoarang's inclusion in it, like other new entrants, he arrived looking to take revenge on Ogre for the disappearance of his master. But at the same time, it was established and made very clear that his alternative and now primary plotline hinges around a personal vendetta with Jin Kazama. And as I've mentioned in the past, this secondary feud of a fiery upstart versus a main character echoes elements of Paul Phoenix trying to beat Kazuya in the first two games, and that early feud there. But unlike Paul, who later devolved into a comedic partnership with martial law, Hwoarang's feud and begrudging respect of Jin has persisted throughout the series, and indeed most, if not all, of his ending cutscenes feature Jin to some extent or another, whether that's saving him from Tekken Force troops in Tekken 3, clearly to prove something as much to himself as anything else, trying to goad him into a fight in Tekken 4, or embarking in a comical, ill-fated street race in Tekken Tag Tournament. So Hwoarang's raison d'etre is intrinsically linked to the fate of Jin, and far from being a tiresome trope, I think the dynamic that's been fostered between these two, where on the one hand Hwoarang's a competitive delinquent driven to beat him, while Jin, for his part, has much larger issues to deal with, such as the Devil Gene and so on. And so the extent to which he acknowledges Hwoarang at all does vary from game to game. And I think that's a really good dynamic and sort of progression and feud of these characters riffing off one another as the games go on. So Jin is a major foil to Hwoarang, one-sided as it may sometimes be, and is a major element of his characterization and progression through the series. However, far from being a one-dimensional delinquent chasing down Jin for eternity, the other character who tells another side of Hwoarang's story and adds a degree of dimensionality to him is his master Baek, with whom we see him interact in several instances. And it's great how, despite his cocky animosity towards pretty much everything, Hwoarang does have this high regard and deference to his master, which is explored in numerous ways, both severe and comical. And my personal favourite is Baek's ending in, I think it's Tekken 5, where Hwoarang is defeated by two street thugs before Baek shows up, defeats them instantly, and drags Hwoarang away like a chastised child. So really interesting dynamics there, and characterisation between Hwoarang and both Jin and Baek. And so, moving finally on to aesthetics and costume, once again, his Player 1 and his Player 2 outfits double down on the dual aspects of his personality. On the one hand, we have his student's debok, which serves as his iconic primary outfit in Tekken 3, and is later adapted and dialed down in Tekken 4 and beyond. And then we have his secondary outfit, which has comprised, again, not unlike Paul Phoenix, of motorcycle leathers in the form of chaps and riding goggles, which uniquely has since superseded his Taekwondo attire as a primary, or at least a much more promotional attire. In most instances we see Hwoarang, and indeed he is one of the more radically altered palettes that we see throughout the game series, since Tekken 4 shows him as a crew-cut sporting army deserter, and Tekken 7 now sees him sporting a much more casual outfit with an eye patch, which many have attributed to an injury he sustained in his Tekken 7 ending, where he saves his rival Jin from a hand grenade. So indeed, we're yet to see if this eye patch becomes canonical for Hwoarang, and I think it may perturb some fans of the new pirate attire he might be sporting from Tekken 8 onwards. But nonetheless, excellent character and excellent characterization through his outfits, and this variability between the street punk and the studious Taekwondo. So there we have it, a very brief look at Hwoarang, who remains a flashy favourite among Tekken fans, and continues to have, I think, one of the most vibrant, multifaceted movesets to grace the series, with his stylised application of Taekwondo. If you got this far, thanks very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. And feel free to drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on Hwoarang.